Welcome to the second video for section 1.1. What we're going to talk about today is how to draw our angles in standard position. This is an extremely important skill set that we're going to use on most of the problems that we face in our semester. So let me just jump into how we count, or how we're going to figure out how to draw angles in standard position. Just a quick reminder, standard position means that the initial side is right here on the x-axis. The terminal side is created by, for a positive angle moving in the counterclockwise direction, a certain number of radians or degrees. And if you wanted a negative angle, you would move in the clockwise direction, a certain number of radians or degrees. Now, the author here talks a lot about the mathematics required to find your angles and draw them in standard position, talks about adding and all these, all this mathematics here. It doesn't have to be that complex. I'm going to show you a method right now where if you know how to count your angles, your radian measures on a coordinate plane, you can bypass doing all this mathematics that the author is talking about. So let me show you how to do this. Let's jump over here to this screen. And the author uses a circle like this with these tick marks to help you understand where these angles would end up in standard position. We're going to start our lesson with some degree measures, and degree measures are relatively easy to do. It's the radian measures that are going to require a little bit more work. So let's just start with something like, I don't know, let's say 30 degrees, okay? If we wanted to do 30 degrees, get this going here, 30 degrees, we would just have to know, and I mentioned this in the previous lesson, that when we draw 30 degrees in standard position, the initial side goes on the x-axis. 30 degrees uses this tick mark right here, okay? And we would draw the terminal side up to that tick mark. And what I mentioned in the last lesson is we draw 30 degrees long and short with respect to the x-axis. Okay, as we do many more examples, you'll understand what that means, but it is long and short with respect to the x-axis. So that would be 30 degrees, and that would be what 30 degrees looks like in standard position. Okay, and then we can use multiples of 30 degrees, or we can use this idea for multiples of 30 degrees. So this is 30 degrees. This tick mark right here is 30. Okay, this tick mark is another 30 to give us 60. This is another 30 to give us 90. Another 30 to give us 120. Another 30 to give us 150. And then another 30 to give us 180. Okay, so you can see we're just looking at multiples of 30 degrees. And then we can continue. That tick mark right there would be another 30, which would be 210. And then another 30 right here for this tick mark would be 240. And then down here would be 270. And then another 30 degrees would be 300. And then another 30 degrees would be 330. And then another 30 right here gives us 360. And there's one full complete spin around the circle, 360 degrees, okay? So, if you had to find something like, I don't know, say 240 degrees, you wouldn't have this picture in front of you. What you would have to think is this. Let me get a new circle up here. So if we had to draw 240 degrees in standard position, what I would do is I would say, okay, I know this is 180 degrees. Okay. How much more do I have to go to get to 240 degrees? So I would, think in my head or use a calculator. 240 minus 180, that's going to give us 60 degrees. I need to go 60 more degrees from the 180. Well, how much more is 60 more degrees? Well, here's 30. And here's 60 more degrees. So my angle would look like this in standard position for 240 degrees. Okay, so we just did some simple math to figure out how many more degrees do we have to go past 180 to get to 240. Now, another way to do that is to know that this is 270 and 240 is less than 270. So how much short are we? So we would do 270 minus the 240, and we would see that that's 30 degrees. So we would go back 30 degrees and land in the same spot. So that is the way to figure out how to draw these degree measures in standard position. Okay. So another angle that shows up, or multiple of angles that shows up, is 45 degrees. So let's do another circle here. So what does 45 degrees look like? Well, 45 degrees would be these tick marks, including the y-axis and the x-axis as we go around the circle. So here's 45 degrees right here. And then another 45 would be 90. And then another 45 would be 135. And then another 45 would be 180. Okay. And then another 45 would be 225. And then here's our 270. And then another 45 would be 315. And then we finally end up at 360. Okay. So that's how you can figure out some of these other angles and what they would look like in standard position. So we would use the same process. So let's say we had to do 315. Okay. You get another circle up here. Let's say we had to do 315 degrees and figure out where that falls. Well, here's 180 and here's 360. I would say, well, it's kind of close to 360. Let's see what the difference is between 360 and that 315. So how many degrees short are we going to be? Okay, so we can see that we're 45 degrees short of the 360. So that lets me know that my terminal side is going to be right here. My initial side is always right here. And there's 315 degrees. Okay. So that's the process we go through with degree measures. And we can use the 30 degrees for the 60 degrees. Let me show you that one real quick. 60 is just a multiple of 30. But it's helpful to know how to count 60 degrees, especially when we get to the radian measures. So what does 60 degrees look like? Well, 60 degrees is this tick mark, this one, and I want you to notice that we are skipping the 90 degrees because 90 is not a multiple of 60. So we're going to have 60 degrees here, and then another 60 gives me 120. I'll put the 120 right up here. And then another 60 gives me 180. And then we continue on. There's another 60, which is going to be that 240 that we saw earlier. Another 60 is going to be 300. And then another 60 gives us 360, one full spin around the circle. So, if you had to do something like 300, you could either use the multiple of 60 or the multiple of 30 and figure out where that angle, what that angle looks like in standard position. When we draw 60s, we're going to draw them taller with respect to the x-axis. Okay, they're tall with respect to the x-axis. 30 degrees is short and long with respect to the x-axis. You'll see what I mean as we do reference angles in a lesson down the road. Okay,